Welcome to the No Name Podcast, episode 116. What's their names? God, 116. Romans 116.
Not ashamed of the gospel.
Yeah. The Craze Group.
The Craze Group. Yeah, I forgot what they called.
How did I forget the name of that
Me
organization?
too. That's crazy. It's slipping my mind right now.
They were all over the place. I mean, they still are, but yeah. Anyways, as you can tell, we're doing this from the outside, so hopefully you guys can hear us. The views looks good. We're doing it a little bit different today, just because we had several things going on, so it's kind of interesting just to try it out outside. So we'll see how it goes. And the weather's not too bad just yet.
No.
So even though we got the Texas sun coming out, it's not there. And this is being filmed in Texas, not in California.
Yeah.
So.
We're definitely in Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Kind of jumping into the topic, I think one of the things that what I was sending you and what we're talking about was, I think I've been thinking about the growth of the church and kind of where I go to church right now, and what I've seen, and even in other churches where I've been around, and even something we've been trying to do, and really. It seems like the concept, and maybe it goes. I do think it goes all the way back to biblicals. It's just more of a. They use the church services and like the Sunday more as the gathering and the kind of evangelistic type thing, and bringing in new people and
Correct.
But the meat of it and kind of where they say that is in their what they call their growth groups, and it's really like small groups. And it's not, so it's Bible study, but it's supposed to be interactive. Like you have leaders there, but they're not supposed to just teach. They're supposed to kind of pull in. And we also have a special guest because we're filming from the house and we don't have anyone to watch him. So he may pop in and out of frame every once in a while.
And that's fine.
Marcos, you want to say hi? You want to say hi? Okay, no, you're just going to hide there? Okay, It's this small group concept of coming together on off-day churches at different hours or different times with different focuses to kind of teach, but also help each other be accountable. It's supposed to be like I think when they figure that when you get into these groups and you build the bond, you become more accountable. You grow with the church and things like that, and then it kind of keeps expanding. And I don't know. My mom was telling me when she dropped off my nephew, like the saying for the school was learn today, lead tomorrow. Or something like that. Learn today, lead in the future. Something to that extent.
Okay.
And I kind of started thinking about it, and maybe you guys see it differently. I don't know. But like, I think today a lot of times in the church, a lot of times we're more about. Do we need to stop or
No.
Yeah.
Oh, more of the times it's more about where we continuously learn. I don't know if we always want to lead, and I think part of that is because there's at least in our church, I think at times, or maybe I see in other churches as well, but I think the fear of the responsibility of leading and kind of what the thought of that is. But I think when the Bible talks about leading, it's not just about joining an organization and being part of like being a pastor or the head of a ministry or things like that. I think that does be part of it. But if you really read throughout the Bible, leading goes into a lot of different ways. It's how you lead your family, how do you lead your friends, how do you lead your groups, how do you and leading comes to also understanding of when knowing to follow and things. And I think that's one of the things that sometimes we misunderstand, and I think something that we have to get towards is understanding that, like, if all we do is go on Sundays and Wednesdays or whenever we have things and all we're doing is ever learning, but we're not passing that along and living it out, I don't think we're doing what Christ called us.
Yeah,
This is a great commission.
Yeah, you're doing it injustice, man. That's why, like, for me, like, I always like to tell people when they come to church, you know, especially like when I do like the Wednesday night Bible studies and like, when I do that, I tell them like, hey, look, don't just think that you're just a believer. I mean, we all can be believers. Like you're meant to disciple You know what I mean? You're meant to go out and share the gospel, with other people. And so, that to me, that's more of a focus of telling people in that aspect, like, hey, once you accept Christ in your life and you have a testimony, you start to learn more about the Bible, you come to church, you get fed on Sundays, you're supposed to go out and share that with people, man. I remember Benny, when he used to preach, he would say, hey, look, I'm giving you your orders. This is your orders for the week. Now you're supposed to go out and execute those orders, man. So but I mean, and then you say, leading people, leading people in groups. Some people, they're just afraid to lead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, and I think part of it is like when you're leading a group, it's not about knowing everything. It's about just knowing at least the right direction, and that's why you have the group there. And as you grow as a group,
because you're gonna make mistakes.
And the thing is, you have to have that flexibility to understand that. Because that was what kind of interesting about it. Like, well, before I jump into that, like Jesus even talks about in Luke chapter 6, verse 40, he says, a disciple is not above his teacher, but everyone, when he is fully trained, will be like his teacher. Mm-hmm. And that's part of it. Like, we're all disciples of Christ, and we'll never be above Christ. But once we're fully trained, we're supposed to teach others. And I do like, when I was looking this up, which is kind of interesting, I was looking up some things, and I use ChatGPT all the time now. And I was looking it up, and it was talking about the summary of Jesus' pattern. And it said, learn from him, disciples, live it out, model, teach others, make disciples, empower them to repeat multiplication. And
that's about right.
It's kind of interesting because a lot of times I think a lot of us, we stop at maybe the first two. We learn from him, and some of us are living it out, but we don't go and teach others. Yep. And I think it's the fear of that, the fear of having to know all the answers and things of that sort. But one of the interesting parts is, like, when you look at Jesus, it wasn't always like Jesus knew all the answers because he was the Son of God. And even then he was, as he was going through it, but he sent the disciples out, and when he sent them out 2 by 2, like, they didn't feel like they were fully ready, and they still didn't understand, because you see later, like, they saw miracles, they performed miracles, they did wonders, they did all these things, but they didn't fully understand the impact of it, like, because even as he said it to the cross, they're still doubtful and things of that sort. And I think that's one of the things, when you kind of when you look at these things, it's really about forming these accountability groups. And that's one of the things I would say is, are we doing that in our modern churches? Are we doing that? And I think some are, some aren't. And I think that's part of the thing is, a lot of times everyone wants the pastor to lead, and the pastor is going to lead the overall church, but they want them to lead every small group, every little thing, or they want a leader of the church to lead it, that's fine too. But that's where we also, as we grow and we go, you have these small groups, and they're going to be focused on different things, because one of the things that we forget is, like, as life changes, we all go through different phases. At one point, you're a young person, and so you want to be around other young people your age, and you're in a young adult group, and you learn because you guys are going through the same struggles and things of that sort. Then you get married, and you may not want to be part of the young group anymore. You might want to be part of a couples group, and then you probably get tired of being with your wife or husband all the time, so then you want to go to a men and women's group, and then
come on,
you become widowed or something, and you want to go to
it's a process.
And those are the different groups and different things, and it's okay to move around to different groups. That was one of the things that was kind of interesting. The pastor came to me at the other church and was talking to me, and he had asked me if I was going to a small group. I said, yeah, I've been going to this one. I just haven't been because I was traveling for work and stuff. And then he was like, well, we got other ones. He's like, they do it in small sessions. They usually do it like 6 or 7 weeks, and then they take like 4 weeks off. And then they kind of time it around holidays and stuff. They know, like, hey, if it's the holidays or summer, we're probably not going to be doing it because people are out vacationing. It's hard to get them in. So they kind of put it during certain times, where they feel like the people need it the most and things of that sort. And so they kind of build those around. And I think even the summer they did do one, but instead of having a whole bunch of small ones, they just brought like all the men together, and they did a 4 or 5 week session where they just had different ones, and it was everyone together. And so I think, and again, this is not to replicate or copy or anything like that, but the concept to me was more about, how do we get more people involved in that? Like
that's the question.
Like this is kind of a similar thing when we do the podcast. This is part of it. The part that we miss is the interactive, right? We don't have the group interacting with us. But how do you get people more involved in that? How do you get people engaged in that?
I don't know. That's a good question, bro.
And again, I think part of it is just the thought process. I think a lot of people, they think they sign up, and I think one of the things I noticed about it is whenever they do it, they have two people doing it. They co-host. So just in case one person's down, the other person can do it. They can rotate, whatever. Okay. Because in a matter of 7 to 8 weeks, life happens. There's times, marriages, death, things. You get sick, you can't do it. So there's a lot of things that happen. I think that's one of the things that has to happen there. And I think we have to encourage others to do that. But I also think it just comes to us. Like, I think it's, as much as people, I don't know. I think the comfort in learning, and I think this is something we saw with the disciples in a different way. The comfort of learning is easy because you're there and you're just being fed. I think when Paul talks about having the milk, and this is part of why I think Jesus also said he had to leave, right? I mean, there's the part of the Holy Spirit coming, but they were no longer going to have the physical view of him on a daily basis. And I think that was going to be different and for them, because when you look at it, they were comfortable just being around Jesus. They were comfortable just hearing him talk. They were comfortable letting him do it. Like, you do the miracles, you do this. Because remember, as you go through it, when you look at it, whenever he confronted them and asked them stuff, that's when they got nervous. Like when he was like, okay, how are we going to feed these 5,000? They're like, well, I don't know. Yeah, you do it, and they had to figure that out on their own when they're on their own and teach others. And I think that's what you started seeing, that they started growing in that area.
I don't know. I think that's probably more or less the basis to, well, kind of more or less the basis to Christianity is like, it's a lot of things that you're just not gonna understand.
Yep.
But you have to have trust and faith in what Jesus can do you, and he can show you what to do. Yeah. Like you're saying, like with the whole feeding of the 5,000, like they was worried about themselves.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean? They wasn't worried about feeding other people. Yeah. They was like, we hungry.
Well, I think also there's this concept of you think you have to be perfect to do it. Yeah. And I don't think any of us are perfect.
Nah, man.
None of us are without sin.
I was
None of us
reading that today.
Oh, really?
Wait, let me see. Let me get my phone. Hold on. Because I got an app. It's called the Bible Genius. But I got a devotional. It's the first 15. And it said, living without expectation of perfection. Romans 3:23.
Yep. Did it say that again?
And it says, living without expectation of perfection.
Okay.
Yep. And it says, Romans 3:23, we all know, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. That's crazy.
Yeah. I think that's one of the concepts that we struggle as with Christians. I think even with I think even with a church similar to ours, where, and again, I think it's changed over the years, but where you see where our church came out of, which is a lot of originally like drug addicts, alcoholism, things like that, which are more visible addictions and sins, which, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people that have it. It doesn't happens everywhere.
Right.
But when there are extremes of it, your very concept of the thought of screwing up, and then a lot of times we'll throw out the scriptures. You go back to the dog goes back to its vomit.
Oh yeah.
You get these thoughts and this fear of failing, and you have to be perfect, not make a mistake, because one slip is going to send you back to it, and that's not the case. I mean, you're going to have mistakes, you're going to have issues, you're going to have failures, and it's through our imperfections that God works through us, and I think that's kind of sometimes the reason why people are afraid to be part of these groups. And honestly, I think as you get into that group, people are gonna know you, and in that, it's good and bad. In that, hopefully, it creates an atmosphere that you feel comfortable. But as you become comfortable, you're gonna start letting out who you are, and I think in that helps you because you become vulnerable. And what sin, what the flesh and sin and the devil want to do is isolate us and make us feel like, well, if anyone ever finds out, you're gonna be so ashamed and they're gonna ostracize you and they're gonna do this and that.
Yeah.
And
that's not the case at all.
And a lot of times, I mean, it can be at times. Don't get me wrong. I'm not gonna say there's not places that don't do it, and there's people that won't do it.
But I'm just saying it shouldn't be like that, though. Right.
Yeah. And for the most part, you'll have the, if you have the grace and the mercy of
that's
God,
exactly it.
Then that's what starts feeding into it, and you start understanding that. And I think that's what causes growth to happen and things of that sort. And I think we have to start not creating, but I think that's where. One of the challenges I think for our church next is about moving to that next phase of teaching others and empowering others, right? I think, if all we're doing is being taught by Christ, then we're being selfish if we're not teaching others. And by that, I mean, and again, I'm not saying that you go to hell for that or something like that, because I'm not here to judge someone if they're going to hell or not. But what I'm saying is you take what God gives you and you show that light. And if he's teaching you, and then I think the other thing is also when we talk about leading, like right now we've been focused on small groups because I really think that's a concept we got to start growing towards. But I think the other piece is the leading in other areas. Like Christ calls us to lead our families. And that's both husband and wife. A lot of times we throw it at the husband. That's husband and wife. Christ calls us to lead in our work, and that doesn't mean being a manager. It's about having integrity, showing grace and mercy even out there. And I think that's one of the things that we miss is like there's a lot of areas that we should be leading in our life of showing Christ's grace and mercy and his love for us. And I think that's one of the things that if the modern church we were doing more of, I think you would see more disciples being built, more of it being passed along.
Of course, but that's the thing, though. It still just ponders the question of how do you do that, though? Like, how do you get people to want to be, more involved in the church? Because, a lot of people, I think they don't understand that being involved in a church organization, and I'm gonna say all, but if it's a good Bible-based organization and they're teaching you stuff out of the Bible, that's a good thing to be a part of. But a lot of people don't know, man, that's a blessing to your life.
I mean,
it's an absolute blessing, and sometimes people don't understand that, and that's why I say, like, I don't understand how can you get people to want to be involved? How can you get people to say, like, hey, you know what? Yeah, this is something that I want to be involved in.
Yeah.
I want to try to say, hey, you know what? I want to put my efforts into it. If God give me the will to do it. Like, how do you do that, though?
I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know. You've been around longer. How do you get people involved?
Yeah. How do you get people involved? No, seriously. How do you do that? Because like, let's be honest.
The mindset. Look, the gringos, white people.
Okay.
Lean into the mic and talk.
They like to. It's natural for them to learn.
Yeah.
That's how they're taught from the very.
Okay.
They're born. They're taught to go to school. They're taught to learn, to educate themselves, and that's why they've gotten up to where they are. You see, now the Mexicans and the blacks were lazy. Most of us don't like school. Now that is changing a lot.
Yeah.
Because now you see a lot of educated, Latinos,
minorities,
or minorities. You see them changing, but in the church that I see people, especially like our churches, Hispanic, we love the entertainment. We love the feel-good spirit. We love that, the songs is touching our hearts and all that, and then, we go home all happy, and that's it. You see, and because I believe, I'm a firm believer, when somebody gets saved, anybody,
You want to do something, right?
yeah, God will put something in their lives.
Exactly.
They have a
Yeah.
purpose to do something for
I
God.
agree with that.
Then the
Yeah.
second is sacrifice. We live in a time that nobody wants to sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we live in a time that life is very fast, very busy, and you know, whatever precious time we have for ourselves, we want to keep it for ourselves.
Yeah.
And you know, and then the third is the organization we came out of. That we thought, you know, you had to be a disciple. They taught you how to, you had to go full time. Everybody had to go full time and all that. Now there's not that many around still at our church, because most of them are dead, you know.
Well,
But you know,
I mean,
but you know, they're afraid.
The concept, the
Yeah.
thoughts,
That
Yeah.
you know, they're gonna have to leave their job. They're gonna have to, you know, go full time.
Yeah.
And it's not that. You know, one thing in our church, and I've always would tell others from our the organization that came out, we were a blessed church, because most of our men that were at that time, from my dad to me, you know, and still now with Tony being in charge, we've been blessed that we have men that work and want to help out, because that's sacrifice. Because you go and work 8 hours at your job and whatever, then afterwards you go, you know, like you do the Bible study, then you guys do Sunday mornings, and,
even
you know,
even women that work. And,
yeah, even women, you
Yeah.
know, both, you know, that they sacrifice to come and help us out. You know, that's, and I've always told people that's responsibility. You know,
Yeah.
and because of the job ethic, the drug addict, the criminal, you know, most of the time they never work. They're lazy. They're out on the streets hanging out, you know, finding their next fix or finding their next, you know, to do whatever they're gonna do in drugs and all that. And you know, they don't have no responsibility at all.
And I don't think I think when you're using the word, like earlier on when you're saying lazy, I think that's the word that you're used to using, but I don't think that's because they're not lazy.
Not lazy,
They're not
but-
lazy in the matter of hard work sometimes when it comes to.
Right.
But I think because I was thinking about this as we were going through this, and it's always a little controversial, and so it's general. I'm not saying it's everybody. So I say that with a preface, but to your point, when it comes to like when you start looking at races and history and how you grew up and things like that, I don't think we were lazy and hard and working. But I think when you look at it from a church standpoint, a lot of our groups, and as they grow, we're used to being almost like followers, just the everyday workers. Like, okay, I come in, I punch the clock, I walk out. And sometimes we treat our relationship with God the same way. Like we punch the clock, I punch out. And there's a piece to it when you start thinking as a. And this is why I think like, and it's not just, but I do think I've noticed it more in that like sometimes when you look at it, we want to come in and we want the pastor to tell us how to live our life.
Oh
we
my God,
want the
man.
pastor
It's
to tell
wild,
us,
bro.
to
And
tell us
that's
how
what
to
I
make.
mean.
Yeah,
Not lazy.
yeah,
Where
yeah, not
Yeah.
working wise, but
because
it's
most everybody that goes
Yeah.
to our church, they work.
yeah.
So they're responsible at their job.
Yeah.
So
Because
you're
if they
saying,
weren't
so
responsible,
you're saying spiritually
Yeah.
lazy.
not only that, lazy to our personal self. See, once you get out of work, it's like even when you go home and you have shorts and all that. Once you get home and you say, "Oh, I've got these shorts to do," once you sit down in the couch
yeah.
or watch TV
Olvídate
or whatever,
porque-
that's it. You
Yeah.
get lazy in that area. That you know what?
Yeah.
I worked 8 hours. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'll do it another
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's
you're
what I
right.
mean.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
it comes
No, you're right.
to the concept, and that's why Jesus said, "Whoever follows me must deny himself."
I think
Yeah.
I
You see, and people are afraid of that word,
Yeah.
deny, because they think they have to deny everything.
Well, I think they associate it with sin and stuff, and I
Right.
think one of the things that kind of what's coming out of this, I think is, and I've been guilty of it, and I've had to tell the Lord, okay, help me in this area. We get selfish, and I won't say the word lazy, but selfish in that.
Yeah, that's the word.
Selfish in the sense of that. It takes time to pour into other people. Like if you're gonna when you get into a small group, it's not about having all the answers and having 20 hours of studying.
It's
but
not only time, but trust too.
But it's a matter of
Yeah.
Like if you have to engage people, and then you have to pull out, what's going on in them,
Yeah.
and you have to be willing to give out
Yeah.
what's going on in you, and that's an emotional investment. And you have to deny yourself in that area, because if not, you'll hold it back, and it gets very,
because we use different words.
Yeah.
I used to, way back, I would have discipleship class with men that wanted to be leaders in our church and all that, and I would have them at 7 in the morning on Sundays, because everybody worked, So, I had about 15 men that wanted, because I only chose a certain amount, and they would come every morning on Sundays, and and I would teach them, and still at that time we had 2 services,
English and Spanish.
Yeah, so we had to deal with both those services too, and all that, So, it's And that's where I think that word, it's not laziness, you're right, it's sacrifice.
Yeah.
We don't want to sacrifice, and because denying takes sacrifice, and we're afraid that if, we deny ourselves or we sacrifice, that God's going to take, God's going to ask everything. But God, if you study the Bible, God blesses more than what you can deny or you can sacrifice.
And I think the concept of it is, if you start growing it, and if you truly do what, you disciple, model, make disciples, and multiply, well, now you have more helpers. And so you don't have to, I think the concept of, like, where I want us to head as a church, and maybe this is kind of why we're talking about it as a podcast, is, we want these small groups to go on, but we want them to go on for like 6 to 8 weeks, and then take a month off, and then restart it 6 to 8 weeks, and change the things, and make sure people are getting involved in it. And the reason I'm saying that is because as you do that, if you're learning in those groups and you're growing, then God starts, as you start growing closer, you're like, okay, you know what? I feel the pull to lead one of these. Well, now you have more of them, right? And you can add different times. You can do some on Mondays, you can do some on Tuesdays. You can do them at different times where it fits people's schedule, because there's a lot of things going on in life. And I think the one biggest group, I think sometimes, and not everyone, and I hope no one gets offended, because we're not trying to offend anyone. There's a lot of hardworking people that are in our ministries who are sacrificing. We're talking about in general and overall the body of Christ as a whole. But I think sometimes the older group thinks that, okay, they're being left out. And I think, one of the concepts I think we've missed is that when we retire from work, that gives us more time to do things, to teach. And I think that's why the Bible understood that. Like, there's a point when you look at the Old Testament, if you really study all of this, God gave us the instructions on how to live life. Not just about, following Christ, but how to live life. And if you look, as they got older, it talks about older people give the wisdom to the younger. Why? Because you're going to have more time, right? Because as you get older, you can't work in the fields or do, back then, do the farming like you used to. You can't go out there 12, 15 hours a day. But that allows you to have that wisdom and that growth. And again, you see that throughout the Bible. Like, God understood how important it was to have that he created the Levites. Like, he separated the Levites for the purpose of having a group for a short time who were going to focus on him, and their job was to bring the people closer to God. It wasn't just about that they just go and worship and no one else. Their job was supposed to be going and bringing the people, holding the people accountable, because they were going to be working all the time. And someone had to be doing that, studies and stuff.
There was when I first heard about it, because the names change all the time. Way back, I think his name was Paul Young Cho. I think it was. I might be mistaken. It was either from Korea or somewhere. I can't remember where from. I know Asia. He's the one that first came out with a book about home sales that I remember. And one of the books that I read, because he had a big church where he was at, and people would walk miles. I mean, miles. They would walk to go to his church. And he had thousands. At that time, he was one of the first mega churches, that you would hear, and they would walk. So his thinking was, okay, I don't want them walking all the time for Bible studies or for this or that, right? So he started. That's when he started saying, I'm going to have home sales. and he started doing Bible studies in different areas and all that, and his church started growing. It multiplied more than what it was, you know. And because he saw the hunger of the people, you know, because whatever country they were, I can't remember right now what country they were, you know, they would walk. They didn't have cars or whatever. They were poor people, and they would walk to just to go and receive from God, you know. And I think that you know, sometimes we're afraid because, like you said, we might think, oh, what am I gonna teach? I don't know nothing. God gives you whatever you put in your mind and your soul. It's a computer. God will bring it out when you need it, you know.
I think that's
and then you just teach whatever, you know. I think because Tony, I think, was telling me that over there where the church he's going to, the group teaches basically the same, right?
For the most part, yeah.
For the most part, you know, the booklet or something they got.
Well, and I think that's what the concept of it is, like, it's organized, right? So you and this is where the pastor and the leadership still plays a part in it, and in that you're led by God. And like at one point it was about studying the book of Acts, and they had a guideline, right? Now the job of the group was you read those chapters during the week, and when you come in, it's about discussing it, right? It's not about reading it there, and you might be doing 2 or 3 chapters because they're trying to condense it into but really what it was about, just real quick, and what it was about is the leaders' jobs in those things is to create conversation. It's not for them just to teach, it's to create. And if you look, when Jesus was teaching, he created conversations. He would ask them questions. He would try to pull out of them. It wasn't him just teaching them. And at times it was, but a lot of the times he was asking them questions, pulling things out of them.
Because it's like the Bible says that Jesus was followed by the multitudes. Yeah. But he basically concentrated on the 12 disciples that he chose. You see, he taught them, he trained them, because he knew the Bible says that these were the men that were going to turn the world upside down. So he knew that through these 12 men, even though one fell, they were going to keep on spreading the gospel. And you know, and I remember when way back my dad put me in charge of the home Bible studies. We had several, and he would tell me, go and check them out, you know, don't say nothing, just study them, see, you know, what they're doing. And at that time we were supposed to be teaching the lessons that we had, you know, and I would go and check it out, why some had more people than the other and all that. But one of the things that I would always see is that once they got together, it was easier for people to communicate and know each other. You see, and then it's easier to pour out what you're going through, you know, because sometimes I see it in our church after we finish service, you know, because we're outside, it's hot and everything, everybody wants to go. We just start putting everything away.
It's even if you're inside, cause
even
the church
inside,
I go to, it's inside. And
oh no,
you go out.
Even when we had it inside the church, they say amen. You know, everybody wants to.
You're
leave
ready to go
that.
eat and
you know, so we don't really interact that much. You know. And in the home Bible study or cell group or growth, whatever, you know, we want to call it, it's easier to communicate, and they open up more. You know, because sometimes new people come and they don't know nobody. You know, and that's one of the things that I like what the sisters did, that little flyer to cut off with the information. And to contact them and all that, you know, start that again, which it's, you know, because sometimes they come once and then we don't see them no more, and we can call them and all that, because, you know, sometimes the devil will burn them. You see, they didn't even say God bless you to you, they didn't even say this to you, you know, and you know, and it will help the church. But we need teachers, you know, and not professional teachers, just regular teachers.
I think you're right. I think when we say the word teacher, it's just someone who has learned something, right? I think that's where people get confused. They think they need a certificate or something. I think one of the things that you kind of said there, it's not really like, I never wanted to do anything just to grow the church. I know it'd be a byfactor of it, but it's not to just grow the church.
Right.
I think part of the thing that you put in there is it's about accountability. Like one of the things we lose is that community and accountability and understanding that we're all gonna go through stuff. Like that's one of the concepts I think people don't understand when they get saved or they start going to a church is they think everything's gonna be perfect. And you're going to go through things and you need people around to help you with that. Because if not, then your mind's going to go idle. And when you're by yourself, you're your own worst critic. All you're telling yourself is, man, you screwed up again. See, you keep screwing up. You're going to just keep going. Why even try? Blah. And when you have that accountability group there and you have somebody there that's to encourage you and help you, but also hold you straight, right? You're kind of thinking, hey, I can do this. This is all right. And then you're like, you have someone there like, are you sure you want to do that? That's going to lead. And something Jesus had said, and I found it interesting in that it's in John chapter 13 through 15. It says, you call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet.
Hey.
And it's interesting because if you remember that the story, all the disciples didn't want Jesus washing their feet. They were ready to wash his feet.
Yeah.
And now he's telling them, okay, I wash your feet. Now you got to wash one another's feet. You got to wash others. And I think that's one of the things when we go into these groups and we start leading, like when you come to the church, right? The concept of it is when you come to the church and you get, you have an encounter with Christ and then you start growing there. Our job as leaders and more mature Christians, not that we're perfect, we make mistakes, but is to wash your feet.
Yeah.
And it's not so that you later on come and wash our feet. And I think that's the concept that you were talking about, like in the old organizations and things like that. The concept was like you're making disciples so they wash your feet. And it's not about washing our feet, it's about washing other people's feet.
Yeah, because
you wash we're washing your feet as newcomers. In other words, we're trying to tell you, hey, you're going down the wrong path. Hey, be encouraged. We made those mistakes. You're going to have those things. Like, you're not going to be perfect. You're probably still going to screw up and you're going to make mistakes, but that's what God's grace. And as you start growing in that, then your job is to go and now wash other people's feet and do that. And I think that's where you see that community growing, and hopefully it'll grow in that sense, right?
Because I believe that we've distorted the word discipler and discipleship.
Yeah.
You know, and all those, the meaning of those two words, one is a teacher and the other one's a student.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean, okay, if I disciple you, you owe me.
Yeah.
No, you don't owe me nothing. God is the only one that saved you. You know.
Come on now.
You know, as a church, you know, it's just pastors and all that, where God called us to be. Our job is whoever comes to our church, you know, we teach them.
Yeah.
We train them to try to be the best Christian, the best worker for Christ, you know, in whatever ministry it is, and even if it's not a ministry. Because if you witness to your family, to your friends, you're working for Christ.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're working right there.
Yeah.
And that's our job. But, you know, because I saw it a lot, where they would, okay, you're my disciple, okay, wash
you're my
car,
slave.
But I
do
found,
this, and, you know, and you know, now, through my experience, I've trained men and all that throughout the years. A lot of them were grateful. Say, Pastor, can I wash your car? You know, Pastor, can I do this for you? You know, and I've always been a man that I like to do stuff for my own.
Oh yeah.
You know, no, I got it. You know, but then I saw, you know what, they were just being grateful. You know, it ain't that I obligate them or you know, it was discipline, because you see, and that's another word, discipline. People are afraid of that. Oh, if I get involved, they're gonna discipline me. Discipline only means correction. You know, how to correct. And my dad would always teach me, look, Joe, what works for one doesn't work for the other.
Yeah.
He said, like you've always, they taught you how to be a hard worker throughout your life. What you don't like is to read. So when I have to discipline you,
you're going to know what you got to do for
cassettes. At that time we had cassettes, and I know I'm going to give you books. And man, I know that's going to mess you up.
Yeah.
And I would learn, because I didn't want, you know, and you know, because I've never really been a student, you know.
But
never.
And to your point, that like the discipline is to it's supposed to be correct in love. It's
Right.
and it has been distorted, and people have abused
Yeah.
it, like just like any human beings.
Right.
People abuse it, but like it's like with my nephew right now. Right, he's going to. He's inside.
He's inside.
He's in there, but he's going to school, and they're trying to teach him to be responsible, and so he's supposed to take out his folder every time he goes into class. And so he's going, and he doesn't want to take out his folder, and it's not because he forgets. He just doesn't want to do it. He just wants to rebel.
I asked him, Marcos, how come you don't take out your folder, Marcos? You're supposed to take it out and put in the bag. Because I don't want to.
And that's,
And I said, man, that sounds a lot like somebody. and then
he's referring to himself if you didn't catch it, not me.
And then the next thing, I remember Fidelia said the first day he went to school, he got out because he'll speak more to Fidelia, on things like that. And he said, I'm done. I learned everything. I'm done. One day of school, that's it. And when Fidelia told me that, I said, that sounds like a lot of Christians. Because we learned John 3:16,
yeah, right?
Or 2 or 3 scriptures. Well, I'm done. I already know everything.
But and going with it, it's kind of where the concept is. Like he said that, and then they taught to him, and my mom, my dad, his grandparents, and my sister, his mom, talked to him and told him, like, you need to turn it in. And so that night he's saying, okay, I'm going to do it. And in the morning he says he's going to do it. And he goes in, he doesn't do it again. And so it's like, so I get on the phone with him the next day, and my thing is take away his stuff. Like, take it away. And it's not that I want to take away his stuff. It's not like I'm getting enjoyment that he doesn't get to do what he wants.
Yeah.
But, and again, I don't know. It also was a lot of other people talking to him. But, the next couple of days, he's turning it in. And that's the thing. Like, it's not we're disciplining him because we want to and it's an enjoyment or we get pleasure out of it. It's a matter of because we want him to be responsible. Now, I do think the school could have done a better job of it because they still gave him stickers for the day that he missed it. I don't understand that. Like, if you didn't do it, you shouldn't have gotten a sticker.
Yeah.
But that's a different topic for a different day. But I think that's the concept, right? You try to do it in love. You try to do it in care. And sometimes you have to, like, I remember a lot of time in ministry, like, there's people who have been involved in ministry and I won't go too deep into it, but like at times we'll tell people, hey, take a step back and just sit down a little bit. And they're like, well, no, I want to. And it wasn't to try to take away something they felt like was worshiping to God. But the thing of worshiping and leading and things like that is if that has become your focus and you lost your focus on Christ and you're messing up in other areas, that's where you need to take that time and step back and do that and do those things. And I think that's where people struggle with that because it's the same thing, it's like what God did to Moses, right? He let Moses lead. He showed Moses miracles. Moses got to see the back of God, but he also didn't let Moses go into the promised land. And he told him, hey, you know what? Hey, I'm going to, and Moses probably was upset by it. He probably was hurt by it, but yet Moses also knew how to trust God and take the correction, right? And it wasn't just about Moses, but it was also about the people around him saying, hey, it doesn't matter how high up you are, or how many people you're leading or whatever, if you don't obey God, there's gonna be things to it.
And because Moses disobeyed God, because he was frustrated with the people. Because all of a sudden he became a leader of 2 million people,
something like that,
somewhere like that.
Yeah.
And and from the very beginning of getting out of there, first they were happy, then they complained. Then they were happy, then they complained.
Yeah.
So every time they wanted something, they would go to Moses and say, Moses, we want this. And then, like the water. And, God told Moses, hit the rock.
Yeah.
And he hit the rock and water came out. The second time that they were crying about water, God told him, speak to the rock. But Moses was so frustrated with the people and all that he misunderstood or didn't hear it right. So he thought he was supposed to hit the rock again. Because that happens in ministry. You can get frustrated because, we think that, I remember when the boys used to play basketball when we were kids, I put them in the Spurs League. And I went to a coaching, they had a coaching meeting for the class, and he said, okay, here it's about fun. And they said, everybody's a winner. And I said, wait a minute. I raised up my hand and said, no. What do you mean winners? They have to learn how to lose too. Because life is not always about winning. It's about losing. No, sir. You gotta, they're kids and all. They say, yeah, but these kids are gonna grow up to be men.
Yep.
And if you don't teach them, I said, I don't believe that concept, and I never liked it, to give a trophy to everybody because they participated, So we only played 1 year because they didn't invite me again the next year. I believe in winning, and losing. Now, at the same time, when they lost, I would teach them, you can't just get down because you lost. It's a loss.
Yeah.
Get ready for the next one.
Yeah.
Learn from it.
I think
that's life.
Yeah.
And I think that concept comes into the church where people get say, oh, everything lovely and all, because a lot of Christians, they do study the word, but they only want to study the promises, everything God's going to give them and all that. And they don't study the whole Bible, how all the men they struggled. Yeah, they were blessed. King David was a blessed man.
He still struggled.
But I guarantee you, he would have given up everything if his family was all right.
Son.
But it was his mistake that brought all that,
Yeah.
And that's why it's very important that, hopefully we get people to get involved and to help out, because, a lot of people are going through stuff that they don't want to talk to nobody, and sometimes not even to the pastor. And when you don't talk to nobody, you're only going to listen to 3 voices: God, the devil, and you.
Yourself,
And sometimes you need to talk to other people to find out, hey, I went through the same thing you're going through.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with that. I struggle with that. I still struggle with that. Because we're all going to struggle.
Yeah.
We're all going to struggle.
And I think also the one, I think we got to challenge people to be part of that. And I think, again, it starts first with a relationship with God, and He puts that passion in you, the passion to help others, I think, is always a byfactor of loving God and having that relationship with Him. But then just because we love God and we have that relationship with Him doesn't mean we answer that call. And that's one of the things. And again, answering that call, again, it's not about joining a ministry or things like that. I think it's more about, being leaders out there. And hopefully that's something that we challenge people to do. And then it's about accountability, building that community, building those things. I mean, the early church grew because of community. They grew because of that. And if you notice, even the disciples were like, I cannot judge every single thing. So they created people to do that, and they created small cells, and they created these things because they understood that. And I know everyone wants, the answers from a pastor or something like that, but and there's times where you need to, but there's also times where you gotta be part, be part of the other groups and things of that sort. Like, I think the disciples understood they couldn't give all the answers to everyday life to people, and so they created the leadership that they had. And if you read in through Acts, and I think it's just people getting engaged. I think people stepping out of their comfort zone, getting engaged. It's interesting. It's another form of worship and how we get with God when we're all together and things of that sort. I'm trying to remember. I was listening to this guy, and he said something that, man, I wish I had wrote it down. He said something interesting about worship, and he was talking about how most of us will go and we want a certain song to play, a certain thing, and we forget that that's not really worship. It's not about the music we want. It's about what does God want to hear?
Yeah.
What is God wanting to... Like, we're not worshiping for ourselves. We're supposed to be worshiping to Him. And I think we lose that concept of it because we have our favorite songs. We have these things and I think that's what it goes to, the whole thing of the relationship with God is truly that. It's about a relationship with Him. And when you have a relationship with Him, you want to show Him off. And that's the whole concept of having the relationship with God is having that close... Okay. But don't walk right in front of the
That's all right,
cameras.
fine, man.
It's about having that relationship with God, And that's the whole point of it. When you have the relationship with God and you fall in love with Him, you want others to fall in love with Him, and you want others to get to know Him because you know how great He is. And here's the opposite part of it, and it's kind of interesting. I was listening to that. Man, I always forget that guy's name. What was that guy's name that goes around and talks to the colleges?
Oh, the gringo.
Yeah, I can't remember his name.
I know you're talking about though.
But yeah, there's a guy, and I saw a short video of his, and one of the things he was saying was, he was talking about that God doesn't send us to hell. He was like, God doesn't send you to hell. He said, if you live a life that you wanted to be separated from God, when you're in Judgment Day, He's just granting your request for eternity. And that's the same thing.
Correct.
And that's the thing that we miss in it, because we think, yes, God's the judge and He's there, but it's really He's judging how we've been living our relationship with Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And He's judging, like, did we truly have a relationship with Him, and are we letting Him in? Are we going? It's almost like in a marriage where, and maybe it's more old school marriage, but where you actually courted someone for a long time. The father was supposed to get to know you, and the father's protective of the bride.
Yeah.
And he grants, like, it wasn't about like, oh, you're paying enough for him. Again, a misconception, but it was a matter of, are you gonna love this thing that I love and truly, and I'm gonna, and so I think when you look at it, it's one of the things with the relationship with God is again, heaven and hell is a matter of being separated from God or being connected with God, and that all goes. Can't believe you just walked in front of the camera. This is what happens when you have a kid around too.
Yeah.
But
gotta love it.
But that's the whole point of the relationship with God, is that, when we go there, it's a matter of, have we been having that relationship and now we're gonna have it eternity, or have we not been having it and now all of a sudden we want it? And I say that with this is that in those small groups, our whole job is to hold each other accountable for that in our relationship with God, and having that. Right, encouraging each other to grow closer to Him, understand His love, because sometimes we're going to doubt it. Sometimes we're going to think we screwed up so far away.
A lot of times.
And then sometimes we're going to be thinking about, messing up that love. At the end of the day, just because you get saved doesn't mean all your temptations, your desires, the things inside of you go away. They're still there. And so having that group there helps with that. And I think that's why it's important, whether you're in a small group or not, get involved in a small group. If you go to our church or you go to another church, get involved in your church. Get involved in those things. That's the whole point of the church and the body of Christ, is staying connected. If it was meant for us to just be separated, then He would have never called it the body of Christ. He would have never gotten 12 disciples. He created an atmosphere of community that separates itself from the world, and I'm not talking people, from the world itself and the desires of the world and things of that sort. So,
right.
Well, I think in the Book of Acts, when the beginning of the church, they said to, fellowship, breaking bread.
Yeah.
And I think there was another one, can't remember. It's and I believe it's very important, because when you get to know people, you pick one another up.
But that's like,
and they'll serve with you, and like I've had a lot of men. I've been fortunate. I still have a lot of men that they help out through the, they would if we had to go somewhere, like if I took them to Mexico here and there, and they would go. They would take their vacation time just to go and help out, because they understood of the, of reaching other people, and the church's job is to help people further their relationship with God. The stronger the relationship, the stronger you love God. And because Revelation says, I have one thing against you guys. You have lost your first love. And before He said that to that church, He was telling the church how great they were doing. They were doing everything correct, except one thing, their love with God. And, when I've learned that when you do not have a good relationship with God, because it's a struggle to have a good relationship with God every day.
Yeah.
You know, and then you let it go. The thing that comes in is obligation.
Yeah.
And when you feel obligated, you start seeing everything wrong.
Yep.
Everything that you know, and the devil starts having a field day with you.
Yep.
Look at you, you're there doing this and doing that, and nobody appreciates and all that, you know. And I've learned in my life, I gave my life to God, and what He called me for, I answered it. You see, so I've got to be responsible for the answer that I gave to God,
Right.
to what He wants me to do, you know. And that's why I try to maintain the best I can my relationship with Him, even though it's been an up and down throughout the 40-something years.
Oh, I'm
you
sure.
know.
Yeah.
But you know, and before I know we're almost gonna end, about people live afraid of going to hell. You know, and when you live like that, you're gonna live a miserable life. You know, hell was not meant for us. You know, but you can go there.
Marcos.
But the grace of God is upon our life, and we have to, you know, keep a relationship with God. You know, God did not send Lucifer to hell; He sent Himself to hell. The moment He allowed pride to come in and said, "I will be greater than God," you know, and you know, so you live to serve Christ, you know, the best you can.
Yeah.
And not be afraid of making mistakes, because we're all gonna make mistakes. I've made 1,000 mistakes, and I'm still making mistakes, you know. But from every mistake, I tell the Lord to help me to learn from that mistake.
Yeah.
You know, help me to do better. Help me to realize, you know, and you know, and I've been fortunate that God has allowed me to correct some of the mistakes in my life. You know, and you know, so. To be a teacher, or to be somebody that runs a small Bible study, you don't have to be a scholar. All you have to do is love God, allow God to
Use you.
anoint you,
Yep.
you know, and we're gonna be there to help you, you know, and that's it.
Yeah, I think to close it out, I think that's part of the thing is having that relationship with God and growing to it. I mean, if you don't have a relationship with God, in theory, you're already in hell. Because that's the whole point of it. It's a separation. I know we talk about the fire and the God, but the whole point is whether being with God or away from God. That's really the main thing. But yeah, I encourage you to be part of at your church, whether you come to our church or somewhere else as we launch it. Get involved in your local churches. Or even if you're in an area where you can't be involved with the local church for whatever reason, well, start your own small group. I think community is important, so definitely get involved in that. And then other than that, hit the like and subscribe button and pass this along, and we'll see you next time.
Marquito.
You want to get in and say bye?
Huh? The podcast? It's a podcast, not a podcast. You're gonna tell them hit the like and subscribe button, Marcos? No? Okay.